Should be enough for the copyright strike. What a lovely tune, eh? I mean, if you listen to the lyrics of that song, it's just fantastic. It's slow, it's somber, it's a ballad. It's the kind of song I like. This is episode 59. I haven't done one of these for a long time. And I'm not going to promise that anyone who is at this point in this video is going to get out of here for another 10 minutes. See if I can beat 10 minutes. I doubt it, but let's try. All right. This is episode 59. That was I Will Follow You Into the Dark by Death Cab for Cutie. I remember discovering that band about a decade ago and fell in love with those guys, and I've always wanted to see them live in concert and wonder if I'll ever have that chance. My commentary is titled The New Normal. Now, this is something you hear people say all the time about COVID. I was reading a couple of things that really struck me. One was a piece by a virologist that's been doing lab work in search for a cure for the common cold. You know, everybody used to say, oh, it's like a cure for the common cold, just knowing how impossible that is. Well, it turns out that finding a vaccine that works effectively against COVID is no more realistic necessarily than just that, finding a cure for the common cold, which is, of course, simply 4 different variants of the coronavirus. This being the 5th. That's why it's called the novel coronavirus, the new one, the one that just happens to be the most vexing and the most deadly. So there was this virologist who's been working on a vaccine for the common cold who said, look, this is just a really hard problem because of the nature of this virus and the difficulty associated with generating a vaccine. That's just proving that a single dose works. I'll get into a little bit later here how challenging it is to mass produce and then distribute and then be certain that you're distributing fairly. All kinds of major logistical problems associated with distributing a vaccine to like the world's 7-odd billion people. The other piece I read was in the Washington Post, which set forth an argument that essentially said how this is a decade-long investment for us as humanity. We're going to be doing we're in a COVID-related behavioral shift that will persist for at least 10 years. You know, it's like, do we really think those plexiglass dividers are just going to get torn down in the grocery store? Doesn't seem likely, right? Humanity is sticky in the direction of change. It's hard to get us to change. Once we change, we don't go back. You know, remodeled restaurants suddenly going back to normal? I don't think so. Stepping 6 feet off the sidewalk to, yielding to people that you're passing on the street before we have herd immunity? I don't think so. That's going to take, and it could take years. The word of the day is word, because I don't have one. Quotes of the day. I have got lots of quotes. I think it's been a minute, so I apologize. In the 4th year of this presidency, this is one I missed from last time, the black comedy has finally given way to tragedy. But not because Trump suddenly discovered how to use his authority for dictatorial or democracy-defying purpose. Rather, because in this dark spring, America needed a president capable of exercising power and found that it had only a television star, a shirker, and a clown. That was about 2 weeks ago, written by Ross Dutat. Sorry if I got that name or butchered that name in the Times. And, in a sense, it's positive that Trump hasn't turned out to be an authoritarian dictator because he doesn't actually want to have power. He just wants to have attention. So the damage Trump's done is by virtue or reverse virtue of the fact that he is just so inept, but he's not actually looking to control people in the same way that a dictator would seek to control people, to do true deep endemic damage. He has done, true deep endemic damage, but he's not a dictator in the traditional sense. He's a self-obsessed, narcissistic television star who craves attention. And it does end there. Second quote, this is not something that I ever thought would actually happen, Musk said during an appearance on NASA television yesterday. He started SpaceX in 2002. He did not really think that they would occur. He expected 90% chance they'd fail to even get to low Earth orbit with a small rocket. And they ultimately, though they had to delay the launch yesterday, and I am so excited to see a launch off American soil into space again. I was such a huge fan of the Challenger, or not, of the space shuttle program, and even though it was overpriced, and it was just so cool to see that work. And now that a commercial entity has replicated that level of technology and has been hired by NASA to take astronauts to the International Space Station, it's just beyond incredible to me. That's such an enormous technological, societal success for humanity. Next quote, I'm thinking about things in different stages or eras, Graham said. We had a discussion this morning about what can be ready for the winter of 2021, what could be ready for 21-22, what kind of regimen or vaccine concepts could we want after this is settled into a more seasonal virus. So this is a correlate to the assertion that we are in a multi-year, decade-long, seasonal, maybe not seasonal, phased, multi-phase battle, call it what you will, new normal with coronavirus. It's not going away. Even if we had a vaccine, it would take years for us to reach complete herd immunity. The changes in our behavior, the way we think, are not going to change for a long time. The economic slowdown is probably going to be protracted. I think we're going to start talking very probably about a COVID global depression that will persist for some number of years. It'll shift economic values. It'll shift economic the way the economy is put together will change. The parts of the economy that thrive, other parts that disappear. This is going to be an enormous change, and it's not going to it's not going to happen that quickly. It'll just roll and persist for a very long time. And I don't think that's the way people are thinking about it yet. And honestly, I wasn't thinking about it like that in the acute early phase when I was doing these updates. I wasn't thinking about COVID in this way, but I am now. The first few years of a vaccine, global demand will far outstrip what manufacturers are able to supply. This is a really important point. Okay, we're just not going to be able to make enough. Even if we find an effective vaccine, we're not going to be able to make enough of it. Roughly 60 to 80% of the world's population needs to be inoculated to reach herd immunity. That's when enough people have become resistant that it's difficulty spreading widely. Without international agreements worked out beforehand, the short supply could devolve into bidding wars, hoarding, and ineffective vaccination campaigns. So just the politics of the vaccine, given its demand, this is a post piece by William Wand and Carolyn Johnson, almost assuredly there'll be fights. It'll be a scrap. People will refuse. There are anti-vaxxers refusing the vaccine, and on it goes. All right, next quote. If SARS-CoV-2 established itself as a stubborn endemic virus akin to influenza, medical experts say there will almost certainly not be enough vaccine for at least several years. Even with the unprecedented effort to manufacture billions of doses, about 70% of the world's population, or 5.6 billion people, will probably need to be inoculated to begin to establish herd immunity and slow its spread. Scientists say that's consistent with the prior quote. Next quote. We know that smoking can kill us, and yet it is responsible for 1 out of every 5 deaths in the United States. And this is in the context of the anti-vaxxers who have written online pledges suggesting they will never take a COVID vaccine. Now, that's got to be a minority, right? But it's scary stuff to think that you could imagine that might encompass up to 30% of Trump voters, 30% of voters who are the Trump voters. It's like people who drive too fast. They come upon a scene of an accident, and for a little while, they drive more carefully. But soon they're back to speeding again, said Michael Ulsterholm, director of University of Minnesota Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy. Contrast that with people who have lost someone to drunk driving. It mobilizes them and becomes a cause for them. Eventually, everyone is going to know someone who got infected or died from this virus, and that's what it may take. Simply not enough of us. I personally know somebody quite well who's been deeply affected by this, but most of us don't yet, and I think that changes the attitude. News. A New York City resident has experienced 50 additional micromorts of death daily, probability of death daily as a result of COVID-19. A micromort of death is a 1 in a million chance of dying. On average, everybody has about a 1 in a million chance of dying every day that they wake up in the morning of non-natural causes. That's just the risk of death as a human being. 1 in a million, right? Every single day of your life that you get up, you have a 1 in a million chance, approximately as an adult, period, of dying. So they call that a micromort chance of dying, 1 in a million under ordinary circumstances. A New York City resident during COVID has experienced an additional 50 micromorts of daily death probability. That means that they are 51 out of a million likelihood of dying every single day. Simply, so you say, is COVID deadly? It increases your chance of death if you were a New York resident by 50 times. Just think about that. That's not like, oh, COVID is like the flu. I think we can conclude definitively that's not the case. Should Jack Dorsey ban Trump from Twitter? I say ATAL. Should Jack Dorsey and his board, the company, ban? There's a really decent piece written in the Times about this. The bottom line is, if you ban Trump from Twitter, he's just going to be louder on Facebook. I think he should be banned anyway. or everything that he writes that's false should be linked to, like they did this past week, should be linked to truisms that counter the falsehood. SpaceX talked about this. Launch is delayed until Saturday or Sunday. This is a picture of the day. My beautiful daughter. What freckle awesomeness! And the teeth and just everything about this picture is pure cuteness radiating. I rode in Richmond, Virginia, on Zwift with her this morning, and I had a great time. It's the first time I've ever been able to keep up with her easily. COVID positive life changer of the day is I've rescinded all superfluous reasons to waste time in my life. I'm done with wasting time. I have purpose. I live with purpose in these 25-minute magical chunks called Pomodoros using the Pomodoro technique. And I will put out videos on how I'm living my life shortly. I'm so much more essentially grateful to simply be alive than I ever have been by far in my life. And for that, I am truly grateful. And I love you all who listen to this. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get an update out, but I appreciate you listening to them, and I hope to speak with each of you guys very soon.